In 1885, New York had the third largest German-speaking population in the world, outside of Vienna and Berlin. The majority of these immigrants settled in what today is the East Village. The horrific General Slocum disaster in 1904, however, pushed the Germans out of the area into Yorkville, commonly known then as Germantown. The Cherokee was not always the charming German apartment building it appears today. In fact, in the late 19th century, when Yorkville was predominantly inhabited by Germans, the building served as housing and a treatment center for poor working class Germans with the deadly disease tuberculosis. At the time, the treatment for this disease was fresh air and light, hence the location of the building towards the East River, where residents could catch cool breezes. The primary concept of this building was clever. However, in the early 20th century, it was deemed a failure as housing was too expensive for many of these Germans to afford. The building, however, in the late 20th century was nominated a landmark as it was important for many Germans who contracted the deadly disease.
Zion St. Mark's Evangelical Lutheran Church was built in 1888 to accommodate the rapid influx of German-speaking immigrants. There was somewhat of a language barrier for German immigrants, so this church is an example of an attempt to gain a sense of community within the German enclave. A church is an especially good example of this, as spirituality was a huge part of the communal aspects of an ethnic enclave. Additionally, the spiritual connection of German immigrants was very important to their eventual growth. Zion St. Mark's Evangelical Lutheran Church was built in partnership with another church built in 1847 in the Lower East Side, showing the vast range of people that it connected to.
The Heidelberg is one of the oldest family-run German restaurants in the United States, dating back over 100 years to a time when Yorkville was a bustling German neighborhood. Unfortunately, dozens of the German restaurants that once adorned the streets of Yorkville in Manhattan's Upper East Side, the Heidelberg Restaurant is all that remains. Heidelberg has made its mission to honor these establishments and preserve an important piece of cultural history, according to a bartender named Hilda, who has worked at the restaurant for many years. The interior of the Heidelberg has been maintained in order to reflect German culture of the 19th century. At the time of its opening, the restaurant was considered common as the German population was the most popular in Yorkville. Now it has become much more significant as it is one of the last pieces of German history in New York City, and specifically Yorkville.
The Schaller-Weber Butcher Shop was founded in 1937 and is still around today. This family-owned butcher shop specialized in German-style pork products. As the shop became more successful, it added more products, including German chocolates and other meats, and eventually it doubled in real estate. The store was founded by friends Ferdinand Schaller and Tony Weber. Schaller was a butcher's apprentice in Germany from 1918 to 1923. After this time, he decided to expand his expertise and to look for more opportunities throughout Germany. He traveled for 5 years, learning new methods and strategies about meats. In 1927, he immigrated to the U.S. in search of financial gain, and a decade later, he met another equally as talented butcher, Tony Weber, and they opened a butcher shop in Yorkville. The shop to this day continues their 75-year-old tradition of giving children a free taste of their famous bologna.
Carl Schurz Park was a war zone during the Revolutionary War, serving as a gun base for the Americans that the British would eventually bombard. After the land was abandoned, Archibald Gracie built his house there in 1779. It was eventually named after a former Civil War general, Carl Schurz, a German immigrant. The park thereafter had a strong connection to the Yorkville community known as Germantown. In 1935, it was made into a park by Robert Moses, a New York City planner who contributed to the establishment of many parks. In 1970, it began being restored by the Carl Schurz Park Association, an organization that conserved many of the city's parks.